Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hyperspace on Dark Matter Radio. I'm your host, Miss Solaris BlueRaven. I want to thank everyone for tuning in this evening, and a special thank you to webmaster producer Keith Rowland. And my special guest this evening is Renee Coltson. An adept in metaphysics, by 1989, her natural healing ability was becoming more expanded, and she wanted to further her knowledge in the art of healing. She investigated, decided to train in Reiki, and began her healing practice using those principles. Through another sequence of profound events in February of 2000, Renee was fully receiving and transmitting the newly accessible frequencies of Reconnective Healing. Subsequently, her path shifted and evolved from a successful Reiki Master Teacher to a fulfilling journey, including that of an Associate Instructor for the Reconnection. She leads the Reconnective... Oh, wait a second here. Where did we go? Sorry, you guys. It's going to be one of those days. Hi, Renee. I hear you in the background, by the way.
I'm sorry. How about leads Reconnective Animals?
There you go. She leads the Reconnective Animals program worldwide, facilitates Reconnective Kids programs, and is a practitioner offering sessions for people and animals in person or from a distance internationally. Renee has a long history and deep love for Earth and all that live within and upon her. She brings wisdom gained through years of interacting with the furry, feathered, fuzzy, bald, shelled, and scaly citizens of this planet to workshops taught globally. The foundation of these interactive workshops is based upon the premise and philosophy that all life sharing this biosphere are indeed in partnership to heal and evolve this plane in existence. Renee is the founder of Partnership in Planetary Healing, PIPH, a nonprofit humanitarian organization dedicated to easing suffering and raising planetary consciousness through teaching universal principles from a place of the bigger picture beyond the personal. And her websites are www.piphealing.org and www.reneecoltson.com. And please welcome Renee to the show this evening. Renee, welcome.
Thank you so much, Solaris.
It's a pleasure to have you on, and I hear you shuffling back there. I'm not sure what that noise is.
I'll stay still.
Okay, yeah. Is that paper?
It was.
All right. We've had an interesting start, everybody, but hey, we're doing good here now. We're all, quote-unquote, connected in. So let's talk about you. Let's talk about what you're working on right now, and also the Partnership in Planetary Healing.
Well, what I'm working on right now is what we're all here to work on. Ourselves, our spiritual development, and shifting this planet into a place of balance and harmony. So basically, balance is inevitable. It's how we're going to get there. That's what it's all about right now.
Exactly. And what techniques are the best way for someone to get connected into the higher consciousness state of mind insofar as making a difference on this world?
Well, I think it all starts within, and for each individual taking personal responsibility for what they're putting out. Everything is vibration, so everything that one creates in their life through their actions and non-actions have an impact on everything else. And if we would go through our day-to-day existence with that awareness in mind, I do believe we would be living in a different world.
I so agree with you on that one. And I think, once again, it's about training your mind to participate with higher levels of consciousness. And also, it probably takes a lot of mental discipline. I'm going to hang on for a second. I think we're okay, I believe. Okay, just a second here. Hang on just a second, Renee. This is an interesting evening.
Well, I think we've... didn't you have Eric Pearl on? Did you have any strange electrical disturbances?
Oh, we did. We did. And then you also have a very high electrical charge also, so
yes.
We never know what's going on. Are you there, Keith? I'm just doing a radio check.
Yep, I'm here.
Thank goodness. Okay, yeah. Everybody bear with us. Have patience. We just have a little bit of stuff happening here and there. Okay. All right, we're ready to roll. Okay, Renee, let's pick up where we were leaving off there for a second. And so what are some of the universal principles, and how does one apply this in their everyday life?
Well, it's back to that self-awareness of putting out a vibration is causing your life to create and manifest at the level you're vibrating. So if you focus on energetic vibrations of balance and progress and love rather than fearful, people get what they put out. I think a lot of people realize in their lives things that are occurring based on fearful thoughts rather than positive ones because there's so much emotion behind it. So I think we have to realize that thought is energy. And when you put out a thought with a design in mind and put your attention and your emotion into how you want that thought and that vibration to manifest, the thought actually goes out into the universe and begins thinking for itself. You don't have to direct it. You don't have to control it. What you have to be careful of is any negative emotion projecting outwards towards that thought. So what each person has to do is that self-discipline you talked about.
Right. Well, and I do understand the universe accommodates our picture of reality. So that was well said on your behalf. Insofar as, be careful what you project into the ethers, because it does manifest. And boy, we must be projecting a lot of electricity right now, because we're having some real glitchy situations. But that's okay. We're going to keep rolling. That's pretty interesting. And I know you had some information you wanted to kind of convey insofar as the photon belt goes. If you'd like to talk about that a little bit and the cosmic energies associated.
Well, the Earth began basically going into the fringes of the photon belt in 1962. And as the Earth got closer and closer, we saw more and more information and new concepts coming out, especially in the 80s, with authors like Ken Carey and Barbara Marciniak. A lot of books came out about the shift that was coming. By 1993, it seems that something happened. As we either began our entry into the photon belt, we began receiving these new cosmic rays that had not been accessible on this planet up until then. Those are new bundles of light and information. They're new wavelengths of color and sound. They're here for our evolution. In fact, on May 10th of 1993, I had an experience out in the desert. I really don't know how it happened. It was one of the most bizarre days of my life, but I am fully aware, looking back, that I interacted with those frequencies that day. And one of the things that occurred was, it was almost a graphic experience, maybe. I actually called a friend of mine and said, you have to come over here because I really need a reality check. There were things going on, but let's just say the biggest lesson for that day was when I stood out in my backyard and I was aware of everything vibrating. And I would pick up a rock and I would look at the rock as a totality within itself. But if I looked at different parts of the rock, each piece of a stone, oh God, I don't know how to explain this, would have some sort of a expression or a energetic picture. Mm-hmm. That when you connected it to the rest, it had a bigger picture. Oh my God, that's so complicated. But here's what I was shown. Anything that was in my viewpoint, if I picked up a rock or a piece of paper or a piece of hay or anything that was out there and I moved it or I tossed it, everything changed. So it's one thing to have an intellectual understanding how everything is connected and there's no separation, and that our actions and our non-actions impact everything else. But when you see it in motion, you really get it. And that's what I saw that night. I absolutely was shown, however it happened, that everything I moved, everything I did within that vicinity changed everything else as far as I could see.
That's fascinating, and that's it reminds me of multidimensional sight almost. Where you're downloading this high frequency. And
let me just say, if I didn't have a witness, I would never talk about it publicly.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. Well, I've seen things too. I mean, once you start enhancing that psychic ability, you do open up a grand array of interesting energies. There's without a doubt. So, anyways, it's really interesting right now. I think we're both in really overload, so we're okay, and I'm okay. I'm just going to keep running with this energy right now.
Well, after that evening, by the way, things changed with how I was facilitating Reiki. It looked like I was doing the same thing, mm-hmm. But when I did a Reiki attunement or if I did a Reiki session, there were new levels of energy coming through me that I did not consciously control or manipulate. I could just feel that it was anchored in my body differently and it was coming through me differently. It wouldn't happen with every person, but it would happen with many people, and how it came out with, sometimes it was coming from my heart. I could feel my heart expand, and then the energies would just, it was like, in a sense, like I was lighting up, and the energy would flow upwards and out my arms, and then downwards and fill my whole body. And then other times it would start in my navel center. The energies would flow down into the earth and then come back up into my heart and then out. It was almost like I was dialing in another station.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not ever, I didn't know what happened, by the way. It took me years to figure that out, that it had something to do with these new cosmic rays that had basically become accessible in 1993. That said, I encountered a couple of people through the years from 1993 until 2000 that were doing work without what I believed were those frequencies. But again, I never shifted into changing my reality from doing Reiki to anything else. I just kept doing Reiki. It was when I signed up for a seminar for Reconnective Healing with Dr. Eric Pearl that those frequencies became fully actualized. And I wasn't at the seminar yet. I just signed up.
Wow. So you already set the intent and everything went into motion.
Well, something happened. I mean, there is that energetic connection. You know, I've been on that path for 15 years, so it was an important one.
Right. Well, I've had initiations in the past in the 90s too, and when I received mine, I remembered always feeling like I was initiated like maybe 3 or 4 days before the official initiation. So I do think the energy goes in that direction for sure. That's my experience anyway. But yeah, it's pretty fascinating. And it sounds like you've just been evolving and ascending through this technology and with this technology since that whole event, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah, and partnership and planetary healing also plays a role in that because it is it's an embodiment of work that we take out into the school systems to teach children consciousness. And, you know, they're really sponges. Mm-hmm. I've been to high schools, I've been to elementary schools, and I have to say that my favorite audience really is elementary children.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. They're so open-minded and they really just get it, how thoughts work and how energy works, and that it doesn't stop just because there's a wall there.
Mm-hmm. I think that's wonderful for children to learn that technique, and especially in this day and age where you have so much programming involved. So that's something that will really help them stay more in tune with the higher octaves.
Absolutely. They're important.
That's wonderful. And you do, so you're doing work with children, you're also doing work with the animals as well, so that's been integrated in.
Well, animals to me are very, very, very important to this planet. I mean, obviously, not just to me, they are very important to this planet. This biosphere cannot stay in balance without them. And the fact of the matter is, animals can live without us. Mm-hmm. This planet could actually live without us.
Oh, absolutely. No, I agree with you. I think the biggest thing we have an issue with is mankind right now.
Right. But animals, they all have, you know, I told you I was watching this big lizard out in my backyard today, and I looked it up, and it said that these lizards are very important to the ecosystem where they reside. I thought, well, that is, of course, every animal that is present in the ecosystem has a function. Every animal is a sentient being. They have a purpose, and they have a reason for being. They are here, and they are evolving as well. We're all made up of DNA. The DNA is receiving more light at this time on the planet for the purpose of leaving our density behind to shift into a higher dimensional existence.
Exactly. Yeah, that's all ascension. And
yes.
That's already been happening through frequency. I agree with you on that one. And the one thing I do see is kind of a polarization with people ascending in consciousness and altering their DNA through frequency, and then other people who are kind of stagnant. So I suspect that's due to their own personal belief systems. What's your impression of that?
Well, my impression is that they are in a coma. Mm-hmm. They're definitely asleep and they're not aware. They're watching too much TV, or they're on pharmaceuticals, or you know, they're just wrapped up in their small little world, because frankly, I do believe that there are groups of humans and otherwise out there who are trying to control the outcome of the evolution of this planet. And we are under a programming subliminally, consistently, through ads and billboards. There are filters that we are looking through. We're not seeing the energetics behind most of what we are being shown. In other words, we get the information that the theys, whoever they are, want us to get. So a lot of people at this time, there's cataclysmic weather events on the planet. There are people who have lost their homes, people who have lost their jobs, people who are concerned about money. And when you're down on your knees and you are being dragged down vibrationally with concerns of survival, it can be pretty hard to uplift yourself and see the bigger picture. But really, our call to action is to do exactly that. There is a critical mass factor. There are 7.1 billion people, I think, on the planet. I think 1% is critical mass. 1% of awake and aware human beings can uplift the whole.
Wow. That's interesting.
It's interesting, but we're not there yet, apparently. But, I think the more we're seeing right now in the activity on the planet, we're seeing what appears to be negative energy coming through, like a reflection of our consciousness through these cataclysmic weather changes and earth events on Earth with volcanic eruptions and mudslides and earthquakes. But you know what? There's the other side of that we're not seeing. We're not seeing that things are coming into balance. We're just not seeing the good news yet. And there is a real struggle for balance right now. And I think that we have to go through the chaos because we passed the point, that window of opportunity that we had maybe a decade or two ago, that we could have gone through this shift in a little more grace and ease, but enough people were not awake and aware yet. And I do think people are waking up. And that, again, is where the animals come in, because these cosmic rays that are bombarding our atmosphere and here for us to receive, there are teams of people on this planet that are specifically here because we volunteered to come into this existence at this time to receive these new rays in order to help shift the DNA of the planet and humanity. The animals also can receive this new level of light and information, and they have an innate connection to the earth. So, me personally, I'm not going to count on that 1% of human beings. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to interact with animals and and be aware of them and understand that when I look at something and I acknowledge the beauty and I respect something, that vibration is also coming up.
Exactly.
It evolves.
Yeah, animals to me are pure energy opposed to people who carry a lot more baggage, There's just a lot more stuff to deal with, for sure. Yeah, I love working with the animals. And, it makes sense with the ascension process because as we ascend and as this planet ascends in vibration and frequency, we do naturally drop density. And, of course, that's going to bring up issues. It's going to bring up all this conflict that we've been experiencing, even in observation. So the solution to that equation is really just hold on for the ride, but also work on oneself and watch one's thoughts, actions, lifestyle. Well, what is your impression of that, and what's your suggestion?
I go back to those universal principles, the law of attraction, the law of deliberate creation, the law of allowing, which really is the tough one. So the law of attraction says there's cause and effect for the vibration that you put out. Law of deliberate creation means it's your divine birthright to create your life and the world that we live in as we would like it to be. We have that power. We absolutely have that power. In a sense, there's a term, as a man thinketh, so is he. That's a fact. It's the truth. Now, the law of allowing is where it gets difficult for some people, because if we put our attention on something and how we want the world to be. So there's a lot of information out there, a lot of books about universal principles. And those books primarily are written towards people manifesting in their personal lives, a better job, a better house, a better relationship. I'm saying it is time for us to go beyond the personal into the impersonal and look at the bigger picture of how we are all connected and live our daily lives with that in mind. The law of allowing says that you imagine the world as you would like to be. You see your life, you see your interaction with the world as you want it to be. Don't try and control it. Don't manipulate it. Don't govern every single movement of the universe and tell it how you think it should happen. Get out of the way and allow it to come through for the highest good of all. The work I do with the Reconnection is very cohesive with that thought, because in the work I do with Reconnective Healing, the Reconnection, that is one of the principles of the work, is that we're not directing, we're not controlling, we are not filtering, we are simply interacting with these frequencies and allowing them to permeate the field, open the door for others to open it and walk through, but we're not going to tell them or direct them on how their healing should come through. So I've had a lot of experience in my everyday life with practicing the law of allowing, and I used to want to control everything. I've learned that you really can't.
Mm-hmm.
You can control your thoughts, you can raise your vibration, you can manifest into your reality positive life experiences for yourself, those around you, and the worldwide, and the whole world.
Oh, absolutely. And
through positive influence on your vibration.
Mm-hmm. And for so long, people have been taught the opposite insofar as, personal will and really being more control freak oriented. Of course, we come from a government which is kind of control freak oriented and in pattern, so all that kind of bleeds through on some level. But the DNA is actually, and I'm sure you would agree, is an antenna, so it makes perfect sense that you would be transmitting these frequencies through your DNA, right?
Absolutely, because when these cosmic rays come in, or these new frequencies, basically we are receiving these new levels of light. It is going into our DNA, and we are transmitting and receiving more light beyond anything that we've ever been able to interact with before.
Exactly.
So when we're out in the world, understanding that there is this field that connects us all. I remember when I was a teenager, I asked my mother if she thought she was separated or a part of everything. And her answer was, well, separate, of course. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, how could you be my mother? Thinking like that. Because as a young person, I saw the connectedness in all life. So when you realize that there's this field that we are all interacting with, it basically is our playground in this plane of existence. The field is what's being manipulated with fear right now. It's also where we are able to put our loving influence out for a positive outcome, bringing this earth back into balance and to ascend into the next paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
There is no separation. We are truly one.
And that's huge because most people don't realize that at all.
Exactly. So if you're going through your life competitive, it expresses itself daily, because I live on off of a busy highway, back on a gravel road, and when I go to turn out onto Carefree Highway, someone always speeds up. I mean, I look at traffic, it's clear, and then I look, and the guy coming towards me will speed up. I go, what is it about you not wanting me to be ahead of you? I was just pulling out to drive. We are driven, it seems, through some programming to compete and try to beat other people out. Even when we drive our cars, it's crazy. I mean, try and do a lane change. I was driving on a freeway one day, and all I wanted to do was not drive off the freeway on the right lane, right? That's all. Put my blinker on. This guy, he just sped up. I went, wow, thanks so much. That's crazy. Yesterday, I went to get gas, and I was coming in one direction to the gas pump, and I drive a fairly good-sized diesel truck, right? And this little compact car buzzes right up in front of me, and I went, wow. That was interesting. That was really, and I just, I thought, boy, it's a good thing I don't have the consciousness of a big truck driver.
Well, I'm telling you, you're not alone either, because I've noticed that people have been behaving kind of aggressive lately. I guess it would be, and maybe the competitive thing is what is a good point to make. But yeah, I've noticed a behavioral shift, and that could be due to maybe they're picking up on some frequencies they don't understand and processing them differently.
I think it probably is a difficult time for us. And, it possibly is hitting people's nervous system to the point that they're not really able to integrate it, gracefully anymore. I mean, things have to change. But again, by creating this awareness of what's happening out in the world, your audience, they're listening, they're already aware of this. It's really the people out there that aren't listening.
Right. Yeah, they're watching mainstream stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's really hard to kind of break them away from that cycle. Once again, it's just kind of a pattern. It boils down to their behavioral patterns and what they choose to deal with from day to day. But insofar as the reconnections go, where did that terminology actually come from?
Well, Eric Pearl, who tapped into new frequencies of healing in 1993, and he just had the focus and the commitment to figure out how to consciously interact with them and teach others to do so as well in a different way. So these cosmic rays came in, and they're here permeating the atmosphere. I think I don't know that Eric would say they're the same frequencies or not, but nonetheless, he tapped in, these frequencies arrived into his beingness one day in 1993, and he figured it out. He figured out how to interact with them, way to, move through the field and watch and observe how people were reacting to the movements he was making with his hands, and understanding he wasn't sending, he was receiving, and they were just responding to being entrained into the frequencies. Well, he needed to figure out what to call it. Mm-hmm. And I think he went through a few different name changes, and I think the word reconnective healing, the reconnection, just presented themselves, frankly. But the interesting thing is, this work is Keys of Enoch based. I don't know if you.
Oh yeah, I have that book. Yeah,
it's quite a piece of work.
I love it.
It's amazing.
I was just talking about that book the other day to someone, by the way.
Well, Key 317 is specifically about interacting with these frequencies on a grid level. Mm-hmm. Gridding through the human form. Right. With these frequencies for evolution. Well, it so happens that Eric was on a panel discussion with J.J. Hurtak one day, and one of his associates had the Keys of Enoch with him. And the book just opened to a page in Key 314, and Reconnected was bolded. And so his associate thought, oh, that must be where Eric got the name. And of course, Eric said, no, you think I read that?
That's funny.
Anyway, so where it came from, I don't have the full details on that, but it pretty much just came in.
Wow.
And it turns out it's perfect, because that is what is happening with these shifts on the planet. We are reconnecting. We are having a reconnection to the fullness of the universe, and reconnective healing and the reconnection are really an amazing way. I mean, Eric has a huge mission on this planet. He is doing a lot, to bring these new frequencies forth globally. And people are learning to do what the process is called the reconnection, which literally is a bringing what are called axiotonal lines through the system, all the systems in the physical body, connecting to the planet and back to the fullness of the universe, reconnecting to the fullness of who we are. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. That's very similar to the work I've been doing too. It's not called Reconnection, but I do understand it and resonate with it. And it's all about actually ascension work, really, is what it boils down to, and just ascending to higher levels of consciousness. Now, this reconnection that he does and that you do, that's something that's permanent once you become attuned to this thing. Is that correct?
That is correct. So there's two different applications of the frequencies. One is reconnective healing, and so that heals on all levels: emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, and actually beyond, because honestly, we're working almost like in hyperspace. Mm-hmm. There's gravitational changes with the person when we're interacting with them. Often we hear reports like, I felt like I was floating, or I felt like I was sinking, or I felt like I was expanding, or I felt like I was contracting. And then all these other senses are stimulated. So reconnective healing is a free-form, hands-off-the-body way of facilitating a healing session for a person without directing. So the practitioner literally is receiving these new frequencies of healing called reconnective healing. They go into light production. So if I'm interacting with the frequencies, they amplify in a way through me, and it expands in the field. The person or the animal, or people or the animals in that space, they entrain into their own session or their own experience with the frequencies, whether they are aware of it or not. See, I've done work in herds of horses, and this is probably the best demonstration that I would say I could ever give anybody. I was working with one horse. His name is Sinatra. I was actually being taped by NBC News. And I'm no fool. I knew which horse to tell the ranch manager to bring out, because I know that Sinatra does what we call registers very strongly, which is an involuntary muscle group movement. The eyes move, the breathing changes, appendages sometimes float up on people. Like when I say appendage, I mean their arms, their fingers might move. With horses and other animals, their ears may twitch. It's different than energetic components of healing. It looks different. It is different. There's different rhythm to it. Anyway, so I was working with Sinatra while the camera crew was there, and Sinatra did what I knew what he was going to do. He went into full-blown demonstration. His legs were rocking, his eyes were blinking up and down, he had waves going through his abdomen. He was awesome. So they were all really fascinated by that. And I said, well, yes, that is very interesting, but look at the horse behind him. Her name was Goldie. I was not working with Goldie, but because there I am interacting with the frequencies, so Sinatra opens up to receive. Now we have a bigger field effect because Sinatra is receiving. The field expands with light and information. Goldie connects into her own session. She's now entrained into her own session. Her eyes are going, but she's demonstrating different than Sinatra. And that was fascinating for the camera crew. But then what was more fascinating, I said, well, you really need to take that camera and you need to span it around this paddock. Because look at that burro over there and look at that horse over there. And, the entire herd, they were entrained.
Oh, wow.
Now, and there's no doubt that the camera guy was also receiving, but was not aware of it.
Oh, I'm sure.
So that's really how it works. And, I have through Partnership in Planetary Healing, when I am teaching the animal courses worldwide, I put out what's called a Partnership in Planetary Healing call to action for Reconnective Healing practitioners to go beyond the space where they just came out of the seminar and they learned how to facilitate specifically a healing session interacting with these frequencies. A person's laying on the massage table. It can be way more than that. And that's a beautiful thing that people can come into our practice. They can get on the massage table and they can have healings of various diseases, including cancer, including, anything. Anything is possible.
That's awesome. And
It is.
Have you actually cured people with cancer? I mean, have you put them in remission, or how is your success rate with that?
Well, let me just say there's an interesting word you just used, which is cured. That's what doctors do. Doctors cure things. They cut it out or they give them pharmaceuticals, right? That does not really, it's not necessarily healing. So if somebody goes in and they have an operation to have part of their physical body cut out because there's cancer, that's a cure. That is not a healing. That has not addressed all of the levels that exist in what created that cancer in the first place. And chances are that human being is probably going to remanifest cancer somewhere else in their body.
Right.
With a healing, that means that issue dissolves. And absolutely, we see cures of cancer a lot. And yes, I specifically have with not only with people, but also with animals.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, and I just want to go back to the thought on being at the massage table. Wow, that is fabulous because lives change. And by the way, when people are on the massage table, they leave, and Eric had these experiences, and so do we as practitioners. The people leave our practice, they're lit up. They are now also loaded. Let's just say they are loaded with these frequencies. And they are charged. They're leaving with a charged field. And when they go home, people around them can also experience a healing.
And that's through osmosis, you think?
It's through entrainment. It's through because the person has received this new level of light and information into their DNA. They are now transmitting and receiving more light. That means everywhere they go, they are transmitting and receiving more light, which is back to my call to action for practitioners, is to go beyond the idea that your practice is standing at the massage table. A lot of people come to the seminars, they're never going to have a practice at a massage table. But to carry the awareness, and when you are out in your everyday life, you're at the bank, you're at the grocery store, you're in situations, say that even you're a doctor or a psychiatrist or a school teacher, whatever your life, work is at the moment. You're around people, you're around life, you're around plants, you're around animals. You are transmitting, you're receiving more light. That means you are permeating the environment around you with these frequencies, and that is what's going to shift this planet. So when we have all of these people walking throughout the world who are basically in a coma, they can shift and change. They may never know it. I had an interview with a guy who's out of New York who told me that up until 2 years ago, he was a trophy hunter. And he didn't know what happened to him. he just suddenly had a change. He suddenly went through a shift. He could no longer kill animals. Not only could he not kill animals for trophy, he started a radio show advocating animals. So how does that happen? I don't know. But, people in the workshops for animals will ask the question, well, what about the people who are abusing? How do we change that? And I go, you know what? You need to keep your attention on doing what we do. Mm-hmm. And just understand the people who are the abusers are probably not going to be on your massage table. Mm-hmm. But they're out there in the world. And they can be impacted by these frequencies indirectly. In fact, I did a lot of work in the early years at the racetrack. And it's a very dark world. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've been behind the scenes at a racetrack.
I've heard about it.
It's dark. And I really asked, why am I here? This is difficult for me to see the level of abuse and the disrespect, and the animals were treated like machines, and if they didn't run, they were dead, and even the way they administered some of the care for them, it was just abusive. Anyway, I became aware that there were shifts and changes going within the caretakers and the owners. Now, some of the worst abusers, they're never going to call me to their barn. No, actually, that's not true. Yes, they would, because their horses run better. But for the most part, the caretakers or the trainers and the veterinarians that were calling me was because they knew that sometimes when an animal didn't have a chance, euthanization was seen as an only option for an animal, that Reconnective Healing could actually bring them out of that crisis, and often did. Nice. Most often, yes.
That's wonderful.
And through that, I was doing a Reconnective Healing session on a race horse one day, and the horse was a little, they feed them a lot of grain. These animals, they have a lot of energy. Let's just say that they're not real calm animals. Mm-hmm. So I was in the stall with the horse. We don't have to be with Reconnective Healing. Anybody who wants to do this work and they don't know horses, for instance, they can work from outside the stall. But, I like to be in with the animal to have just a clearer connection and be able to see more, because they're usually closed barn stalls with just an opening in the door. So I would go in. Well, I had the trainer holding the lead rope for me. I said, Lynn, just hold this lead rope for me, because when a horse is under the influence of lead rope, it's kind of more under control, but yet having freedom of movement. Well, I got a call from Lynn a few days after that, and she wanted to know what I did to her. And I said, nothing. Why do you ask? She said, my partner this morning said to me, what's up with you? You're sailing up those steps without dragging yourself up the rail. And she was actually scheduled for orthoscopic surgery on her knee. By her being present in the session with the horse, even though she might not have been having any kind of experience over there whatsoever, she entrained into her own session, had a complete healing. Nice. So because this works on all levels, that healing can happen with people who are abusers. They can clear emotional issues that have brought their experience in life to want to control and manipulate and disrespect other life forms by abusing them. That's usually a power trip, right? Mm-hmm. So things can heal on that level. So that's what I say to the people. I went, you know what? Just go out and be present. Be present. Be aware of these frequencies. Be aware that as you move through your everyday reality, wherever you are, these frequencies are always on. They are never off. When we put our attention on them, they seem to be more. But sometimes, like I'll be in the grocery store and all of a sudden I feel the frequencies. I become aware of them. I might not be thinking of them. I don't put my own attention on them, but I'm suddenly aware that I'm sensing them. And I know that I just became a volunteer. Mm-hmm. That there's someone around who's receiving. Yes.
That's awesome. And now you obviously do the workshops, and if people want to get involved in this, how would they go about doing that? Are you touring?
I am.
Excellent.
The first step is to learn how to do Reconnective Healing, and that takes place in our seminars, Level 1. Level 1 is Reconnective Healing, and that's where you learn how to access these frequencies, learn some of the philosophy, and you can leave that level 1 seminar that's a Saturday and Sunday, and you can go home and you can interact with your own pets. You don't need to go to by the way, nobody needs to go to an animal workshop to work with animals. They can work with their loved ones, they can work with themselves, they can work with their pets, their animals, whomever. They're not practitioners, and they're not going to be, out there professionally doing it, but they can still come to my workshop if they want to know more about maybe having a mission to go out and interact with animals. I recommend it. Working with your own pet, that's one thing. Working with animals that that's okay. But when you're interacting with these frequencies with animals you don't know, let's just say they're not coming through the door and laying on a massage table. And believe it or not, one of the species that can bring the most, different dynamics are dogs. There's a lot of different personalities out there. There's a lot of abuse in the canine world out there, and so you need to know how to approach and how to read their body language and how to pay attention to your own body posturing. So anyway, level 1, you learn how to access frequencies. You just go do it. You can bring it into areas of your life as you so choose. Level 2, you learn more deeply how to integrate the philosophy of this work, and it's 2 more days. And when you're done with that, you walk out that door fully actualized with being able to bring this work to the world at its fullest for Reconnective Healing as a practitioner. And to do that, you can go to www.thereconnection.com. Eric Pearl teaches level 1 and 2 with his teaching team, and that's a global situation. Right now they're in Montreal, and I don't know where they go from there, but I'll be in Germany in 2 weeks. 2 weeks I leave for Germany, and then, and I don't have my full schedule, but I have a website. It's reneecoltson.com, but it's right now it's under, it's invisible.
Okay.
Because I'm making some changes on it.
All right. So, but people can actually access it at some point to find out what's going on and where they can locate you.
Yes.
Okay, great. That's awesome. And so there's level 1 and level 2, and there's just 2 levels?
No, there's 3.
Okay.
And that's all there is, by the way. And now the levels kind of, I think, confuse things a little bit, because at level 1, you are fully capable of bringing about these full-on healings for your loved ones. You're just not doing it, facilitating it, fully as a practitioner, and you don't have the depth of the integration of the philosophy. But yet, things definitely can take place. Now, level 3 is a completely different application of the frequencies. So that's all you need to know. Level 1, level 2, Reconnective Healing. That's all you're ever going to need to know. That's it. You evolve with the frequencies as the comprehensive spectrum of light and information expands on the planet. So do you.
Awesome.
As there becomes more frequencies available, because the universe is continuously evolving, and so the energetic light and information bandwidth is also evolving, and as it evolves, we evolve with it. You don't have to go back and go, oh, I think the frequencies probably are more now than when I took the seminars 10 years ago. I better go back. No, they're there. You've got them.
That's awesome.
Level 3 is where you actually learn to facilitate what is called the reconnection. You do have to go to level 1 and 2 first. You have to be a foundational practitioner. So level 2 is becoming a foundational practitioner. Once you're a foundational practitioner, then the doors open for the reconnection, and that is for evolution and life path acceleration. So people come for healing. Often they'll go, so okay, I had my healing. 1 to 3 sessions is, all we ever do. When I did Reiki, I had clients. I had, on my calendar, I had standing appointments. That is not the fact with Reconnective Healing. People who have spent years going to chiropractors, they may be able to give up their chiropractor. They don't need to keep coming back and coming back and coming back. It's not a result-oriented process either. It's a process. So we do 1, 2, or 3 healing sessions. And how do you know? Well, we really don't. If people have a spontaneous healing, and they do often, don't come back for the second or third one.
Right.
You don't need it. Sometimes the person will have to come in for 3 sessions and then just, again, allow things to unfold. It may not be the healing that they came for, but it may be that something's going to shift within them that gives them a greater understanding of why that dis-ease was in their life, or maybe that dis-ease is there for some other people to learn about, but they learn how to understand more fully the components of what their life manifested that for. And in time, a disease can just fall away.
Exactly. What about a healing crisis? Do you ever run into those?
We don't. And,
Excellent.
I saw that all the time with Reiki. In fact, back to the racetrack. I mean, I remember I went in and I worked on this horse with Reiki because, I brought the history of animals in with me to the Reconnection. And so I was already active with animals before I came to Reconnective Healing. And I did Reiki on this horse the day of a race. And they did not know there was actually a abscess gelling in the hoof that never would have really shown up. It would have probably definitely impeded the horse's ability to run as fast as it could, but that thing exploded.
Wow.
It came out full blown. Of course, the trainer was really upset. That's a healing crisis. That is like something coming out. Or sometimes, a lot of times with Reiki, especially when I worked with elderly people, if there was arthritis, I could pretty much count on they were going to have some discomfort because the vibration of the body was raising and the cellular memory was releasing through the tissue, and that could cause discomfort. We do not see that with Reconnective Healing. If a practitioner has repetitive experience with that, and we don't get reports of that very often, but if we do, my answer to that is, you know what, you need to look at your belief system. If you believe that no pain, no gain, or if you believe that, so what did we talk about earlier?
Right.
The law of attraction. If you have that belief, you're going to draw possibly that clientele into you that has the same belief.
Yep, absolutely.
No pain, no gain. And so it's really important to step into your mastery, own this work, and it doesn't show up.
Awesome. And Renee, with that being said, we're going to take a quick break here at Hyperspace, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Welcome back, everybody, to Dark Matter Radio Network. This is Hyperspace, and I'm Solaris BlueRaven, and I'm here with my special guest, Renee Coltson. And I could hear you shuffling in the background there, Renee, so anything on your mind?
Yes, there is, as a matter of fact. I just want to say that another point of reference for people, and this is fairly simple, to shift into a different behavior, because that's really what we need to do on many levels, is when you are experiencing or witnessing something that seems fairly horrific, the worst thing that one can do is to jump into their emotional body and judge it, because that very action actually fuels negative emotion towards that. So I teach in the animal workshop a thing I call neutral compassion. In other words, to stay neutral, of course, be in your heart and caring and loving, but don't emote, don't judge it, just observe it. Because by being a neutral observer, you can also dispel some of the energy that is fueling that situation.
Absolutely. And I was going to ask you also, do you ever work with maybe law enforcement or animal control with this type of reconnective healing?
Well, as a matter of fact, I have actually worked with the ATF, but it was actually quite by accident. But that was Reiki, but nonetheless, there it was. And it was before I met these frequencies. It was back in 1997, 98. I lived at a location in New River, that had apparently was a point of interest for alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. Hey, I was just the renter, okay?
Yeah, right.
Anyway, I was, and I just made an agreement with the owner that, the workshop and the sheds and these bunkers around the 112 acres I didn't have access to. Anyway, the ATF showed up at my door one day. I mean, I looked out my window and I saw these guys in high black boots and, guns. And I went, what? Who are these people? My German Shepherd was going crazy. Anyway, long story short, through a scenario, they did detonate some areas around that 112 acres, and little did they know how many explosives were, buried down in those bunkers. And my windows imploded on the house that I was renting, and a lot of my animals escaped because they had not evacuated me yet, or my animals. So my animals escaped. So it took me a few days to get my cats back, and so I kept going. And I told this one ATF agent one evening when I still didn't have my cats, and I said, I'm going to have to stay here, because by then they said, you can't stay here anymore, you need to go. Mm-hmm. And so that day I said, I'm staying here tonight because my cats are not going to come back if I'm not here. I need to be here. And he goes, ma'am, you cannot stay here. I believed him. He was a big, bold guy, and he had a big gun. And I thought, well, what are you waiting for? Anyway, so I came back the next day. Now, I had been doing some Reiki on some of these guys because I was in and out of the house for days, looking for my cats. And that same man came up to me and he said, ma'am, I understand you have the healing touch, and I was wondering if you could be of assistance to me. And I went, sure. His name's Luke. And he sat down and he starts telling him his story. So I have my hands on his shoulder because that was where his pain was, and that's how we did Reiki. With Reconnective Healing, we don't need to go to the area. We don't work on the symptoms. We work with wholeness. But in those days, because I have worked with law enforcement, so he starts literally crying. I mean, something touched his heart with just the energy I was working with, and I said, you know what he told me? He told me that he was in Oklahoma City the day that Timothy McVeigh explosion took place. He said he was sitting in his office and he could hear the DEA ladies having their coffee and laughing, and all of a sudden everything was imploding on them and they all died, and he lived, and he starts weeping. And I said, wow. Are you open to the possibility that I can teach you to heal yourself? Because literally, I don't think there's time. Because again, Reiki is time sequential. Mm-hmm. Reconnective healing isn't. If I had been doing reconnective healing in those days, it would have been boom, 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 go evolve. But that's not what I was doing. Well, I said, you're going to have to, get rid of the communicator and the gun, and then I'm going to do this Reiki to it. Well, okay, so here all the agents start coming over, and they go, what are you doing? And I told them, they said, well, will you teach us? So literally, I started a Reiki class that night with the ATF.
Oh, nice.
It was awesome. I mean, it really was amazing. And honestly, those men at the end, and I had to condense the training. And there was a command post down at the gate, the entry into the ranch, and they called up and they said, what is going on up there? And where's Renee? She hasn't come out of the gate. It's been hours. And so they said, we're shooting bogeys at the Pleiades. So, they kind of got it. And anyway, they showed me such respect at the end of that evening, I have to say. And it was amazing. So, yes, I have worked with law enforcement. And I would love to go more deeply with that. In fact, I can see where Reconnective Healing, it's not that easy, Solaris, to get an audience,
right,
with that level of government. It just happened with the ATF. And believe me, Partnership in Planetary Healing was housed there. That was the headquarters for PIF. And I absolutely know that I was called to be present at that place with the explosives for the purpose of, bringing healing to those men and opening things up. But anyway, I would love to see first responders, canine search and rescue, homeland security. I would love to see us be able to get into these situations. Now, these people are not going to go out and do healing sessions while they're doing search and rescue. All they need to do is basically understand that the frequencies are there. And, these dogs are highly stressed out. The handlers could absolutely facilitate healing sessions on their animals. Can you imagine? By the way, I have worked with some people who do search and rescue.
Nice.
I have had them show up at my animal class, and they have gone through level 1 and 2 training. But as a larger body of networking with people, it hasn't happened yet. But I know that element within me is present about law enforcement and government agencies. So I'm kind of just waiting for the right scenario to present itself, because I believe it will.
I think that would be a really nice solution to many things, because it seems to me like their behavioral patterns, not all of them, but they do need to have more of a neutral stance. And I think that reconnective healing might put them in a space of higher consciousness to a point where maybe their interaction with everyone else would be a lot more evolved. I think it would actually be a win-win if you could start something with that.
Well, the interesting thing, they had special response teams from the ATF coming and going, so I met an awful lot of agents. In fact, the director of the ATF told me one day that he thought I knew more of his agents by their first name than he did. Anyway, honestly, those guys, I know this is crazy and people get upset when I say it, but what I found in my interaction with a lot of those men is they chose that direction for their life's work because they wanted to make a difference. Now, granted, I also met and encountered, what I would say are the bad boys, the bullheaded ones, the bully ones. But for the most part, I know that's crazy. People get mad at me about that. To actually recognize that within the ATF, there's actually some compassion within some of those men. They want to make a difference.
That's good. That's good to hear, actually. Yeah, because
It
people
is.
get that persona, and I've seen it too. But there's good and bad everywhere. But I think that some spiritual enlightenment, I don't even want to call it spiritual, but whatever it is that's connecting in through higher consciousness, which obviously is part of that reconnective healing, seems to alter everybody on a beneficial level. And it also helps and assists people in communicating better, which I think communication is huge these days, insofar as, we were talking about what we're manifesting by our thoughts, but the way people communicate and disrespect each other is huge also. So that's something that needs to be kind of distributed on a higher level, kind of clear the line of all the debris.
Well, to infiltrate the governments with these frequencies for evolution and healing would be a huge deal.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And of course, it can happen anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It absolutely can, even without, formal training, just by exposure.
Right. And with that being said, what is your take on all the dirty electricity, all this pollution we're getting from radio waves and all sorts of microwaves and things like that? How does the reconnective healing transmission interact with that?
Well, it doesn't get in our way at all, really. Mm-hmm. But can it clean it up? Mm-hmm. Well, it is coming through the field. They are frequencies for healing and evolution. It works with all life and it works with all light. Mm-hmm. So why wouldn't it shift our environment?
Right, yeah.
In fact, speaking of that, yes, absolutely.
Cool.
Yes, it changes it. And thank you for bringing that up, because as you mentioned it's called conditioned space. So I've noticed through other people's awareness, where I have my healing center usually explodes with poppies before any place else. And the mountain makes no sense, because the mountain doesn't face east. It faces west, so it's not getting the southern exposure. It's not getting the eastern morning light. But yet this section of land where my healing center is more imbalanced than other areas around it, but it's spreading. So when we are interacting with these frequencies in any space, it becomes conditioned. What that means is people can show up here. I don't have to do anything, literally. They could just walk into the building. So when we have seminars, we have had research done. Bill Tiller sends his guys in with their thermodynamic energy, equipment I can't even pronounce. but they start getting the baseline of the energetic measurement of the room a couple days before we start the seminar, because in order to do research, they have to establish the baseline of energy activity in any room. So what they started discovering was things started changing before we got there. The space began to become conditioned. In other words, there was some universal intelligence setting up the conditioned space. And then they would continue monitoring the space while we were teaching the seminars. And there are certain exercises that we were doing, not exercises like, exhausting, hand teaching at the massage tables, how to interact with the frequencies, that things would spike. Well, when we would leave the space, the room would return to its normal base, to its beginning baseline. In other words, it didn't stay forever. But when you are in a space, like I have my healing center, and there's a lot of life here, there's trees, there's cactus, there's a lot of life, plant life, everything. And because I'm here continuously working with these frequencies, this space and outside of it, because it doesn't stop at the walls. The field doesn't stop just because there's a wall there. It actually has conditioned the space and is continuing to evolve. When I go into a barn, and there's 4 or 5 different research groups globally that come in and do research in different ways. They get the same data, but they arrive at it in a different way. And I've talked to all of them about doing some research in the barns that I go to. Because my feeling is that those barns will never be the same, because there's life in that barn sustaining the frequencies. So once we go to a farm, or once we go to a sanctuary, or a therapeutic riding facility, or wherever venue it is that I'm in, we're leaving these frequencies for healing and evolution with all life that we interacted with. Now, an animal, of course, is not going to be consciously aware, but they do become like omnidirectional lighthouses. Their DNA receives the light, and the information is delivered to the instructions through the DNA, is delivered to the body on what to do with it. So they become transmitters and receivers of the light and information.
Nice.
Just like we do.
That's wonderful.
It is.
I mean, it's unlimited potential on so many different levels. What comes to mind is agriculture, farmers, Fukushima.
Right.
I don't know if you've done any work with that at all, with radiation or...
No, but they did do some reconnective healing with the most polluted body of work in Japan. I cannot remember the name of that lake. But the vibration did change. And of course, we've done water research with Dr. Emoto, as a matter of fact. So, sure, things can change. Yes, it is awesome.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the water, the things you did with the water experimentation?
Okay. So they did, in some of the research, they've done it so different ways, but in some of the research, we would actually go and they would give us a container of water, and we would just hold the water and feel the frequencies, or we would not hold the water and we would work around the container with the water, infusing it, I would guess, the water's receiving the frequencies. Or they would place bottles of water in the corners of the meeting room, and then they would measure it before and after to see what the baseline on the water was. Of course, the vibration of the water changed, but here's a really interesting one. Dr. Emoto did some research with Eric Pearl. And we talked about the reconnection, and that's the grid work. There's a certain segment of the reconnection which completes it. It's called the Seals of Solomon. The geometry, the formation of the seals showed up in the water.
Wow.
Yes, as ice crystals. Yeah, and I've got pictures of that somewhere. So the implications are far and wide. I think, there needs to be more people receiving and more people out there with, again, that focused intention and attention of raising the vibration of planetary consciousness and the planet as a whole.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I just love the work you're doing. That's I hope to see you and get connected with you. You know, it's funny because the last time you were in town, we had that huge flood here. So
I know, it was too bad.
I was going to go visit you
I
too.
know,
I
it
was
would have
going to.
been nice.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll catch up with you. What's interesting is I'm thinking about the crop circles too. What's your connection? What do you feel about the crop circles insofar as anything that connects in with that at all, or no?
Well, they see those balls of light.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's, intelligence, cosmic intelligence. I don't think they're all fake. I mean, I think there's some people out there doing some pretty fine work, but that's communication with the earth. That's information coming through the planet, and I think there's information in those symbols. I don't really, I haven't gone to crop circles. I haven't read up a lot of them. I saw Whitley Strieber, I think it was at one of the UFO congresses, within the last few years, and he was interesting, talking about crop circles. But back to the farming thing, I got a Facebook post from a friend of mine from Australia, and she had a flower in her hair on top of her head. And we know through research that when a flower or a plant is disconnected from its life source, the plant, they bleed light. That's what a plant does. It bleeds light. You cut a flower, you cut off a leaf of a plant, and you will see that it bleeds light. What they've discovered through the research with plants is that under the influence of reconnective healing, it lives much longer. Not only that, it can sprout roots.
Wow.
So I Facebooked Julie, and I said, so Julie, how does it feel to have that flower bleeding light into your crown chakra? And then, of course, I said, in a very good way, because we know the flower is going to live longer. Some of those flowers, they just die quickly anyway. I have some cactus in bloom out here, and I see one I know is going to be full on tomorrow morning, and it's only going to show itself once. So I don't want people to think we're out there killing plants. We're not. So anyway, so that stimulated a lot of communication on Facebook about plants and sustainable farming. And absolutely, people who do gardening do find with the vegetables that they seem to be more nutrient dense because they don't have to eat as many of them. Also, the blossoms on the flowers are more lush, they're more vibrant. People who have had a plant that's not doing well brings the frequencies of the plant, and it can have a healing too. So it's not just about people and animals, it's about all life on the planet. So if you just go through the world being aware of these frequencies and charging the field wherever you go, you really have no idea the impact that you're actually bringing forth through your actions. Let's just say those actions are real positive. To be able to do that and not take action, that's, for me, uncalled for.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This, to me, is phenomenal, the type of work you're doing and the healing and the effects you're having on this planet. And I hope more people get involved with this technique, because I feel like everybody should have a reconnective healing.
Well, there is another way. And there is a book called The Reconnection, Heal Others, Heal Yourself. And time and time again, people tell us, did you read that book?
I did, and I love that book. Yeah, I have a copy.
And did you feel the frequencies?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, there you go. And Eric says he does not go through the printer and infuse the lights with the frequencies. It just happens. It's the information. And so people will have healings. I've had calls from people who said, I did so you can find the frequencies. You can begin to learn how to access these frequencies by reading that book. You can begin to learn how to access these frequencies by watching there's a lot of YouTube stuff out there with Eric Pearl and his associates, and me included, talking about the frequencies and ways to move your hands. It's not technique. But we have to move our hands in a way in order to get people to begin to feel them. But it's not a technique. We're not teaching another technique for healing. But people call me and they go, well, I read the book and I did the exercises, and I decided to just, do some things around my husband, and he was sick, and now his disease is gone. Is that possible? Or their dog. They'll call me about doing it with their dog. And I think didn't your dog have a healing last time we were on?
He did. And you know what's really funny is I have two cats. Well, I don't have two cats. I have one kitten and I have a dog, but they're really active when I connect with you, like right now. So just a heads up.
Because it's through the field.
I'm telling you.
The field is a really important concept, and it's not just a concept, it's reality for people to really grasp an understanding of the field. In fact, of course, Lynn McTaggart has a book called The Field. Mm-hmm. And I started reading her other book called The Bond. Wow. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. I only read listen, if people would just read the foreword and the introduction of that book, it would be enough, because she talks about it in there. Somebody recommended it. They said, have you read The Bond? I said, no. They said, well, you sound like you have. I went, well, thank God the information's, retrievable through the field from any resources. We don't have to read all the books. But I did pick up that book, and I highly recommend it. And The Field and The Bond both are recommended reading material for Reconnective Healing, because there's a body of work out there that's relative to the shift and what's happening. Another one that I happen to really love is Barbara Marciniak's Bringers of the Dawn.
Right, yeah.
That is on the list of recommended reading material. Mm-hmm. It is Pleiadian associated, and we don't speak it from the stage, but it's up to people to look on those recommended reading material lists and see what's up and what they can glean from those. And of course, Barbara Marciniak, that book came out at the beginning of this 20-year cycle that we were just completing in 1993. And that book is amazing. And there's a video out there called, can I give that?
Oh, absolutely.
I love this video. It's on YouTube, and it says it all, really. It's, there's several versions of it. Wake Up Call for the Family of Light. And if you go Wake Up Call, Family of Light, you're going to get several options. And I like the one from the Galactic Federation, because they have this guy walking through there, and he's got sunglasses on, sunglasses off. And he's looking at billboards, he's looking at street signs, he's looking at posters, and there's a message, right? A message, what it's saying. And then he takes his glasses off, or he puts them on, either way, and there's a subliminal message coming through, like sleep.
Oh, that's like They Live, that movie.
Consume. Marry and procreate.
Yeah. That's what it is.
It's great.
Did you see that movie, They Live?
I didn't. But
okay, that's what it's from. I guarantee it. But yeah.
I'll have to, I want to see that. But, I like it because it talks about these new cosmic rays that started arriving, and that they're here to light up the DNA. And it talks about their different teams on the planet that have volunteered to come in, whether you're aware of it or not. Mm-hmm. Some people I have a friend of mine, I mean, she doesn't have to do anything. She's not necessarily metaphysical. She is a beautiful soul. She's a bright light. She's a flight attendant. And I go, wow, Emily, you've got it made, because all you have to do is show up and smile, and you change the whole world by the hundreds every day, just because of her presence. I went, I got to work really hard.
You generate the energy too, or you're certainly bringing it in. So a lot of this ties into DNA activation.
Yes, it's definitely about the DNA, because right now that's what needs, we've been limited in our DNA. We were unplugged. So, the concept out there is, the theory is basically we had 12 strands of DNA, and somebody messed with our DNA and unplugged 10 strands and left with a very limited potential. So we were easier to control. And at this time on the planet, this shift is going on because we are here to evolve. This is the time that we are here to get out of this trapped consciousness environment into our next paradigm, that we are going to let go of density. We're going to move into a reality where we're vibrating at a higher level. We're going to ascend.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. You know what comes to mind also is some of the drama that's created here deliberately with some of the scenery they're painting seems to be a deliberate way of trying to sabotage and redirect the mind's psyche, into the false reality, what I call a false matrix, in order to deter us into living in an illusion, opposed to really tuning into higher frequencies and ascension energies.
Through fear-based propaganda.
Mm-hmm, right.
Yes,
yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, that's totally what I resonate with also. And so, but the work you're doing alone, I mean, I just so appreciate what you're doing here on this world. And I really have a resonance with this type of a healing system for sure, without a doubt. And yeah, I suggest anybody who's interested really read the book, and certainly come to your workshop or Dr. Pearl's.
Well, start there.
Yeah.
And there's a second book out there, which actually is a really evolved way to comprehend this work and what's happening on the planet, and it's called Solomon Speaks. And that was also, that's channeled information that's been compiled through with Eric. Eric didn't channel it. Fred Ponslov, I think is how you say his name. He was the channel. He started on Eric's chiropractic table when Eric started just playing with the frequencies. Fred was a chiropractic patient, and Fred started having experiences on the table, so it led to channeling sessions. And there's this whole compilation of information relative to these new frequencies and this time on the planet. And it's a beautiful piece of work. And you know what? Whether a person ever goes to the seminar or not, this book is one to read. It's very inspiring. It's very uplifting. It really, again, it allows you to have an understanding that we're all playing a part in the symphony of this universe and bringing a healing to the planetary consciousness, this reality, and shifting the entire universe, because you know what? It doesn't stop here.
Exactly. That's
what
it.
happens here on this planet matters universally.
I so agree with that. Yeah, it's all like a set, if you ask me. It's just like a set here in association with other planets and star systems, and we're all linked in, what they call interconnected on a galactic level, I guess.
There you go.
It's really fascinating. So that gentleman, Fred, did he have past life recall, or was he just channeled and he just opened up through channeling?
Well, I think that Fred, from early on in his life, had these experiences where he would have other voice channeling, but he never spoke about it. He never really worked with it or did anything about it. But it did spontaneously happen on Eric's table. And he was not comfortable with it at first. That's part of the story. And of course, that's in the foreword of the book, Fred's story and Eric's story with it. And for a long time, Eric didn't really talk a lot about the channelings, and he did share his light and information. It wasn't until the book really came out in 2013 that he full on started sharing. I mean, he's shared parts of it, segments of the channelings over the years, but the book is just beautiful.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
I like it because it allowed me to more freely talk about this work at the level that I understood it. Because before I had to, the Reconnective Healing seminars can be mainstream. And a lot of mainstream people come. This is not a seminar that is, about a bunch of woo-woo people. You're familiar with the UFO Congress, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, people think that people who go to the UFO Congress are all sitting around in aluminum foil hats, and I assure you we're not.
And the aluminum foil does not work.
No, it does not. But when you say healing seminar, a lot of people, that's the idea they get, that you're oming, chanting, and it's all woo-woo stuff. You know what? And the other thing is, listen, over my years as an adept in metaphysics, I've looked at a lot of things. I've gone to a lot of classes, and I've studied with a lot of masters. And I noticed consistently that who was showing up? Women, right? Reconnective Healing, it's about 50-50 in the audience. Yeah, it's great. Mm-hmm. And we get professionals, chiropractors, MDs, professionals from, family medical care practices, and dancers and hairdressers and metaphysicians and people who are master healers. And, we've done research on the people who are master healers as well, because we want to see what happens. So they have usually the technology that's used for that pre-seminar research is they measure the biophoton activity off of the person's hands to get a reading on it, and then they go to the seminar or they go to healing session, and then afterwards they get remeasured, and the biophoton activity has shifted. It's changed. It's different, and it's more. And that's basically what we're really doing, even with plants, is, in Key 317 of the Keys of Enoch, on the last page, it's only 8 pages on Key 317, but try and read those 8 pages. But on the last page, it basically JJ states that a malillumination field fell upon the planet. So what does that mean? It means darkness. And that these frequencies are bringing what has been absent from our spectrum. We have been interacting on this planet for eons of time, basically with a polluted light field.
Yep.
So as much as I loved Reiki, why would I quit Reiki? Even though I got results, I loved Reiki. I did it for 11 years successfully and had healings. Why would I walk away from that? And why would I walk away from natural healing gifts and natural medical intuition? I walked away because this is truly more, and you cannot merge them. This is so evolved, you cannot merge them. And it is interacting with a polluted light field, and this has brought in new wavelengths of color and sound in the vernacular of 1972 when he wrote that book, or 1973. The vernacular in today's world in quantum physics is light and information. So it goes on to talk about plants and animals on that last page, and how the biophoton activity on the planet will increase as the brotherhood, and that again, that's 1973 vernacular, right? Mm-hmm. The brotherhood of light. Right. Well, that's us. Mm-hmm. That's us. That's us, the teams that are here now for the purpose and mission of uplifting this planet and shifting this reality. And do I think that everybody's going to make it? No, I don't.
I don't either. No. I agree
the
with
density, it'll fall away, but I think that, this is just my opinion. And nobody told me this. It's just like how I see it. I actually think that things can split apart. Like this earth can literally, the light body can separate, the dense body can separate, and what is will also remain.
Right.
And your vibration is going to go to the level of existence which you are vibrating.
I agree with that 100%. And that's why frequency fences come to mind insofar as some of the man-made technology they do to interfere with the process of ascension in general. I don't know if you're too familiar with that or not, but that's concerning to some degree.
No, can you talk about that?
Well, it's just there's technological array systems that are set up to actually interfere and scramble the electromagnetic field and scramble the energy signature so that people have a hard time ascending to higher levels of consciousness. There's going to be scrambling, interference. They're running interference, and they're doing it deliberately. So that's a technological thing. It's a covert technological thing that's kind of disrupting the flow of natural ascension. But with the work you're doing, I suspect that you can move right through that. And I really think it's up to the person's consciousness and psyche to ascend to the level they need to be. So I think if they're really spinning and vibrating and the intent is there, they can break through that. But that is something that's being done right now.
Well, I agree with you that there are people in existence in this plane in existence that are not going to let that get in the way.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, we'll punch a hole right through it. I'll be the first one to do that.
Right. Yeah. And it's no different than weather manipulation. I mean, they're manipulating so many things right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really almost a desperate struggle to control and manipulate, but I see it kind of fading to black. I just see it kind of going. Mm-hmm. So, but with Reiki, it's interesting because I also was a Reiki Master Teacher for a long, long time. But what I found, what happened was through the ascension process, because I was doing a lot of ascension work, I outgrew the vibration of Reiki anyway, and I just moved on to higher levels, and a lot of different other energies connected in and descended into my being. I actually received a soul descension. That was back in late 90s. So a lot of things were happening back then. And of course, remember the harmonic convergence and harmonic concordance. Now, I'm sure you were tuned in and plugged into that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that was mind blowing. I mean, I was really blown away energetically by the frequencies and transmissions coming in then.
Well, and that was a definite cosmic interactive reality of bringing that harmonic convergence. That was no accident.
Mm-hmm. Not at all.
Not at all.
Oh, there's such a thing as no access to the universe with that one for sure. But yeah, and I think that the intent behind all that really does permeate through all dimensions and all universes. And of course, the energy you're talking about is descended onto the planet. So that's a consistent frequency that's always here, always accessible. And once you're tuned in, you never disconnect. Is that right?
It is. And, back to the control and manipulation of the energetic waves and mm-hmm. Again, it goes back to fear. If people allow themselves to descend into that fearful reality, into the fearful thoughts, and basically, just go down on their knees and give into it, mm-hmm. that's what they're going to live.
I agree.
And again, it goes back to taking personal responsibility for everything in your life and recognizing that this is manipulated.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We don't have to participate in that.
No, not at all. Yeah, I think too many people have already. But I think working with the animals is a really nice avenue insofar as, going to a different level with communication. And animals are so easy for me, actually. They're very easy to communicate with. I feel like I have a stronger resonance with some animals more so than some people for some reason. So That could be a lot of different things, but I understand the way or why you work with animals nonetheless.
Well, I guess, there are a lot of people out there that would say I prefer them.
Mm-hmm.
I do love animals. They're authentic. You never have to question the motive of an animal. I mean, they are just who they are. Dogs are emotional, cats are mental, horses are, they don't trick you. Well, I don't know. My dog is pretty good at that, actually. I have a little dog that I'll take him to Home Depot with me, and the people have dog biscuits in their desk, and they'll bring a dog biscuit out for Teddy, and they'll put it in front of him on the floor, and he won't touch it. And then they'll go, okay, let me see another color. And they'll bring another one and he won't touch it. And then they'll bring another one. I said, just so you know, he isn't going to eat any of them until he's sure that he's extracted every one he's going to get out of you. So they actually are self-aware.
Yeah, very sharp. Yeah, they understand so many different words and terminology. I know my dog does. He knows all of his toys. I mean, each one has a different name and he knows each one.
Yeah.
Very sharp.
Absolutely. And with the training with the animals, I mean, that's a big thing. I tell people, well, that's part of the teaching point is you really need to mind your emotions. You really need to be aware of what you're emoting, because animals, especially if they're, animals that have been that have the DNA and the memory of being preyed upon, they're so tuned in.
Right.
To any fearful emotions. I know I live at an equestrian center, and I've heard people say, oh, they just always know, those horses, they just know if I'm afraid of them, And I said, it's actually not that they know you're afraid of the horse. They're actually afraid of what you're putting out, the fear. Mm-hmm. They're actually tuned into why is there fear here, and what do I have to be aware of that's coming in to eat me.
Exactly.
So working with animals is a delight and a privilege. Mm-hmm. And certainly teaching the workshop and leading people into that field at a higher level of interaction with more animals on the planet. Again, I'm going to say nobody has to attend that workshop. Once you come through Reconnective Healing, you are able to go out and work with all life, including your plants. And somebody suggested that we do a plant class. And I went, well, the dynamics of that, they're just there. Just go do it.
Right,
just
exactly.
go do it.
It's so simple. That's what the nice part of it is. It just sounds like it's very easy to transition into, but it is also a life changer, I'm sure.
It is. Well, the thing with animals to keep in mind is that people have different sensory stimulation under the influence of these frequencies. Mm-hmm. All senses can be stimulated. All senses can be heightened. Some people see things. Their eyes are closed, okay, but they see things. Some people have a sensory experience of smelling things that are not in the room, because this is an interdimensional. We know that we are interacting with hyperspace. Mm-hmm. Some people have the sense of other hands touching them, and the practitioners don't touch during Reconnective Healing. But we've even had experiences where people have a handprint on them, like there's a warmth, and there's actually, like, you can see the handprint. It wasn't us. Right. So anything that a person on any level of their senses can experience, so can an animal. And that is one of the dynamics that has to be brought forth in these teaching points, is to understand that an animal may not just lay there with their eye. In fact, they're not gonna. I was in Germany getting ready for a field trip, and I was at the barn, seeing what I had to work with, talking to the barn manager and explained to her what I was going to be doing with this, busload of people that were coming in. And I was just standing there talking to her, and about 20 feet away, this horse all of a sudden just flew back to in his stall. Well, I had just, with not consciously, but I just popped into frequency. I don't know, my hands just went. And I went, oh my goodness, I'm sorry. And she goes, do you think he could feel that? And I went, apparently. And she goes, wow, I need to go get my dad. So as soon as that happened, now she didn't go to the point like, oh my gosh, he hated that. No. She recognized that horse just had something happen. But she limited to feeling. I don't know if that horse saw something, smelled something, felt something. I have no idea. But I know that it was frequency related.
Oh, I'm sure.
And so, of course, now once that happened and she got her dad, and he took me through all the barns and going, well, can you work with this one? Can you work with this one? Anyway, it really does help tremendously when the animals cooperate in that way, because sometimes I go into a venue and they just go, I have no idea what you're doing.
Wow.
No idea. But
And how many feet away do you have to be? Now, you can do this distant healing. So,
well, yes, and I could work from here to the Pleiades or further. Well, that's an interesting question, because distance doesn't really exist because of the field. I'll just give you a quick healing story on this zebra that was at a zoo that I was called to work with. And the zebra had the habit, he had bitten off some people's fingers. So, of course, I wasn't going into the zebra habitat at all. And that would be a huge liability for the zoo. Mm-hmm. So they took me through the zoo just like I was a tourist. I was with the animal curators walking through the zoo. And I had a couple of associates with me, and we made a couple stops along the way, at the badger place. And the curator explained that Becky the badger lived in that habitat, but there's no way that Becky would come out because they're very bashful animals. So one of my associates popped in, started doing a float and charging the field with the frequencies. Here comes Becky. She came right out of her habitat to the wall and laid under his hands. Now, that badger had a brain tumor that disappeared.
Wow.
Now we move on. We go to the zebra. They point out to the zebra. There's a zebra standing out by himself, way out in the zebra habitat, and then the rest of the herd is off in another direction. So the lady explains to me, because we told her distance doesn't exist, right? Because we're putting our attention on the being that we're working with through the field. So again, I love it when the universe provides, because I could do this 100 times and maybe 50 of them, the zebra wouldn't have reacted this way, or the animal that I was interacting with. But it doesn't matter. It's still happening. But this zebra, so I looked at the zebra. I went, oh, okay. So I brought I put my attention on the frequencies with my attention on the zebra, connecting through the field. The zebra popped his head up and charged to the fence where we were. So there was the wall, there's a sidewalk at the zoo, and then there's a brick wall, right? And then there's a big ditch, and then there's a high fence. So the zebra comes out at least a football field away, at least is where the zebra was, charged to the fence, stopped in front of the fence, stood there for 20 minutes while I just facilitated a session. Now, if he didn't come, I would have facilitated the session from where he was, but he actually showed up closer 20 minutes later. And he's demonstrating that clearly he's under the influence of the frequencies. And if he hadn't demonstrated it, it still wouldn't matter, because they are there. There's amazing high responders and there are low responders. So 20 minutes later, when my associate said, wow, I think you two need a cigarette after that. Anyway, he left. The zebra moseys on up the hill, and he joins the rest of the herd. Now, the animal curators quite clearly are pretty blown away by what they just saw, right? Well, what I didn't know, because we don't want to know what any symptom or suffering is, because we're working towards wholeness. We don't want to put our attention on what's wrong. You put your attention on what's wrong, you get more of what's wrong. So we're just putting our attention on the frequencies and knowing that we're opening the door for that being to walk through. Well, so the animal curators tell me that the reason they wanted me to work with the zebra was because they brought him in to breed, and he wasn't socializing with the girls. Well, that's where he went, to the girls. After that session, and 11 months later, his first offspring was born, and he continues to bear offspring, not bear them, but interact with the herd.
Awesome.
So he was shy. I don't know. We don't know why, I have no idea why he wasn't breeding, but it ended that day.
Fascinating.
It is.
It's incredible. Are you writing a book, Renee?
I have the makings of a book. Yes, I do. And it's geared towards the importance of animals and planetary consciousness, and how they are part of the evolution of this planet, and how important they are to our biosphere, and basically how we are in partnership with all life. It's not just about us evolving. The entire planet is evolving. And if we will include the other citizens of the planet in the equation, we're going to be much further ahead. Can you imagine a planet without animal abuse? I think in a lot of ways, there was that being, his name was Jesus, and he came in and he signed up for a lot of suffering, right? I think animals, I do a comparison in this way. As the story goes, who was present at that birth? there were more animals than people. And so, in my opinion, that makes animals very important to the creative intelligence of this universe.
I agree.
They are very important. And I think that they have signed on as heart openers. I mean, when people like Frank, who has that radio program now that advocates animals, and people like Frank wakes up to respecting, and not only respecting animals suddenly and not being a trophy hunter, but actually takes action to see to it that there's a consciousness shift about animals on the planet. We know that they are definitely here to serve a purpose beyond things we don't even know. We have no idea.
I so agree with that. Yeah.
Do you know there's 100 billion domesticated animals on the planet? 100 billion. That's just domesticated.
That's quite a bit.
It's a lot more. There's a lot more animals than people, and there's more insects on the planet than anything.
Interesting.
Yes, and that, that's why I include the furry, the feathered, the bald, the fuzzy, the shelled.
Mm-hmm. I used to play with insects. I love them.
Well, they're important. In my healing center, I have to be really responsible. When I leave here for a couple weeks, I need to make sure that everything is cleaned up, because if I don't, the insects are going to show up to do what they're here to do.
Mm-hmm.
The ants are going to come, and there's people out there that say, oh, the ants are in my house, I'm just going to kill them. Well, you know what? You did something. They're not there for no reason. They came in because there was something that their job is to clean it up.
Exactly. And there really isn't any boundaries either. They don't realize it's a house, I'm sure.
No. Well, we built the house over, their homes, so.
Right. And once again, we're getting ready to wrap this up pretty soon, but Renee, it's been so wonderful to have you on. I appreciate everything you're doing with this Reconnective Healing, and I totally resonate with it. I hope everybody else does as well, because it's phenomenal. I mean, it's interesting because my dog just came over here, and he's been hanging out with me the whole time you've been talking, and I know he's picking up on the transmission.
Well, I want to remind people to go to the www.thereconnection.com, where they can read all about it, see where there's seminars, and pick up the book and have an experience.
Oh, absolutely.
Change the world.
Definitely so. And with that being said, with all the planetary changes, what do you see for us to happen in the next 6 months? They're talking about this blood moon and this and that and grand crosses. So what comes to mind for you for the next 6 months and your perception of what's happening here?
To remain aware of your emotions and to remain aware of staying in positive thought and being a neutral observer, because you know what? I have this saying that the beauty of reality is often, and I could say always, hidden behind a veil of illusion. So whatever is going on, we don't know what the whole picture is. We need to remain balanced through it all, however it looks.
I really do. And we were talking a little bit off air, a little bit about the divine feminine and bringing back that energetic in association with more healing towards the planet. Do you think that's possibly a solution to this, or what's your impression?
Absolutely, I do. That comes back to, Gaia consciousness and honoring of the earth as our mother. I actually have had an experience where, it went beyond the intellectual to actually experiencing, knowing that the earth is my mother. I had an experience one day. I went, you actually are my mother. And again, that's the divine feminine. That is realizing, what women have the potential to do. It's interesting because you're seeing more and more men now staying home with the family. More women are going out and they're the breadwinners. Roles are shifting and changing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, part of bringing the balance. And men, I think they're open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Well, the fact that they're going to these classes and, tuning in, that's phenomenal. That's great. I'd like to see more of that happening. Yeah, your work. And the fact that you're traveling across the globe and not just in the United States is even, more impressive to me, actually, because there's so much out there outside the U.S. Seems like, anyway.
Yeah, I'd like to go more. So far this year, the only international sites I have are Germany and Spain, and I'm really working on getting to Oslo mid-year, and the rest are all United States.
Wow, awesome. Well, let me know when you get in here to Colorado.
I will.
Yeah,
And
Definitely.
hopefully you can come visit here
I
too.
will this time. I don't think we're going to have another major flood like the last time.
Eric, I think Eric is going to be there isn't there a Celebrate Your Life in Denver?
I think so.
Coming up?
Wow, is he going to be there?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'll look that up.
So.
I'll check out the schedule for sure.
Yeah.
That would be great.
You missed out last. Well, Solaris, thank you so much. It has been I have such gratitude that you invited me in to be your guest.
Thank you, Renee. It's been a pleasure to have you on. It's always a pleasure to see you. Well, see you, hear you, but I see a lot of things. But anyways, pleasure to have you on tonight for sure. And with just a final note here, I was curious insofar as what your impression is. Do you feel we live in a holographic universe?
Well, I certainly saw that in action. Yes, I do.
Yeah. Okay. I was just curious. I know that that's my impression also, and that, being in the multidimensional realm, it would make more sense to live on that. And I'm wondering.
Yeah. Otherwise, how could things shift and change so quickly?
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite things as a kid, I didn't watch cartoons. I watched Kung Fu.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
And I will never forget, how they always at the end gave you some sort of a statement, and I will never forget this one. And it was, with but one thought, a man changes the entire universe.
Excellent.
How could that be if it's not holographic?
Oh, absolutely. So with that being said, now this type of an energy transmission, is that associated with one facet of the holographic field, or do you think it's the entire field itself?
Oh, I think there's lots of fields. In fact, in the Solomon Speaks, it talks about there's many fields that are being flowered.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not that, well-versed in holographic stuff. I just had that experience.
I think it's fascinating. I really do. I love the work you're doing, and I wish you all the best and success in all you do. And I know that that's already right there. The seeds are already planted for that, so it's already been happening for you without a doubt. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. I hope you really enjoyed the show. I certainly did enjoy having Renee here. And what else do we have? Well, we're getting ready to wrap this up. We've got maybe 60 seconds left here. So any final words, anything you wanted to add in before we transfer away?
I have my little tool in front of me. I just put my eyes on it. I have this little teeny ruby slipper.
Oh, nice.
It's just one shoe. It's not about how big it is. It's the message. It's a reminder that the power is within us, and it's all about our intention.
Very true.
And our thoughts. And so there's my little ruby slipper message for the day.
Oh, I like that. And with that being said, everybody have a great week. We'll see you next week. Thank you again, Renee.
Thank you.